Welcome to the NCDWI Guide podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NCDWI guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 238 of the NCDWI Guy podcast. On today's episode, I have Joe Ruotolo, who is the marketing director at Intaker. We have been using Intaker's AI agent on our website since the beginning of this year, and it has had massive impact in terms of website lead conversions. And so based on that success, I asked Joe to come and be a part of our AI panel at the Freedom Fighter Summit. Joe was kind enough to fly across the country, is in Los Angeles, California, flew to the Freedom Fighter Summit to speak on the AI panel and also to provide wisdom to those in attendance in one-on-one conversations. I really enjoyed a few of the conversations that I had a chance to have with Joe. Really hit it off with him at our meet and greet at Sierra Nevada Brewery on Wednesday evening before the summit officially kicked off on Thursday morning, and wanted to have him on the podcast as part of this 4-part marketing series to share how AI is changing the game for law firms. Joe is going to share some of the pitfalls that firms encounter when they are trying to evaluate AI softwares, as well as how to utilize AI agents in both marketing and client communication. Absolutely a fun conversation with Joe about AI, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as I did. Joe, I'm pumped to have you on the show. It was a blast getting to meet you at the Freedom Fighter Summit. I really enjoyed the AI panel. I think that was one of the highlights to me of the summit. First of all, because AI is just unbelievably fascinating, and secondly, because it was an amazing group of panelists, including you. So really excited to have you on the podcast. We have been kind of a recent client of Intaker, but have been just blown away by the results and the way that it's changed our online kind of messaging response at the law firm. So love getting to meet you at the summit, and excited to have you on the show.
Jake, thank you twice for having me as part of the Freedom Fighters event. I was telling you off before we recorded that just the energy in that room, and how I saw people it was this moment of inspiration for me. And I go to a lot of legal events, but not all of them are done to a degree where I really just feel amped up, and I'm not even a lawyer, but I see and I feel the heart. I see the vision and the drive. And again, you kind of set the stage about what this event, what these 2 days are going to be about. But then just seeing how people in the room responded to it, I think that's what gave me feeling like I was in the right place. So thank you for that, and obviously thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's, I think that what made the event wonderful, this year, and it's not really even to compare it to the first event we did last year, but there was a tremendous energy in the room. And that was, I think, you could put some of that on the speakers, some of that on the music, but I think that just the group of attendees, there was just a tremendous amount of positive energy and conversation coming from the attendees. So, I mean, I think a legal conference, regardless of who's speaking and what the agenda is, can only go so far without the right people in the room. And sometimes you just get that magic chemistry of having the right people in the right place, and bringing it full on. So it was, I mean, for me, that was definitely a big positive from the summit, was just having a lot of people ready to share, ready to learn. I mean, you could see the right mindset with the people that were there.
Yeah, yeah. And I know we're going to talk about more than just the summit today, but another thing that I enjoyed was there was things for people in all different stages of the business. Some people that were looking to scale, others that were looking to exit, and some that were just looking to like, what do I do with my people to get the best result for the company and for them as people too. So anyway, I hope that you keep doing this and it gets bigger and bigger. I know you don't want it to get too big because then other challenges come up, but just a great time with the event. And I know in the middle of crazy storms you pulled through, and I'm sure you talked about that already on the show. But again, have
Yeah,
a
it
good
was it
party.
was a wild time. We were talking about before we got on the call that Joe got one of the last flights out of Asheville before like the madness of Helene. Joe had to head out on Thursday, and so yeah, it's definitely totally different vibe. Great vibe, but totally different vibe. Day two, I did do like a recent podcast, just kind of reflecting on the whole experience and some of the leadership takeaways that I was able to observe from other people kind of stepping up in the midst of a trial without being prompted. I mean, there was some pretty cool response from people at the hotel, people, that were attending, that were stepping into speaker roles that were kind of left void because speakers couldn't get there on day two. So, just a lot of um, good learning life lessons from, what to do in the midst of trial. So yeah, definitely grateful to have you be there and glad you got out when you did.
Oh yeah.
Well, in terms of kind of turning towards AI, because again, this to me is just, it's such a wild west time to be doing anything business related. And I would probably say, even from just a living perspective, we are living through just like a revolution right now. And I don't understand it. So I'm not going to pretend to like, have any of the answers. Certainly not all of the answers. But in terms of just kind of the, uh, you know, way that you see AI changing the practice of law. And again, there's like hundreds of ways that we could kind of dive down this path. But in terms of just from like a client perspective, the change that this brings, mindset, hiring process, expectations in terms of legal service from a client perspective, what are some of the big picture ways that you see AI kind of changing the expectations that a client has when hiring and utilizing a law firm's services?
Now that is a good question, and I know a lot of companies. I believe there was a speaker at an event recently talking about the move away from the billable hour.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Josh talked about that a lot at
Yeah,
the
Josh
summit.
also
Yep.
talked about
Yep.
that now
Yep.
that I think about it. Yeah, and I guess the bottom line is for people who are hiring a lawyer and all these things whether that's generating documents or demand letters or any step of the process that used to take time, what happens now when you can do that in seconds, in minutes, in hours, what used to take days or weeks, and there's I think a people's expectations are changing, not just of lawyers, but of everything. And I mean, with what we do with Intaker, is mostly around that front end of that initial client experience, making sure that someone, when they reach out, they have literally a 5-star experience every time. Even if they're not necessarily the best fit client, making sure that they're treated with care, compassion, respect, efficiency, like speed, the whole thing. But I think to answer your question, how are people's like perceptions changing? I think I see two sides. I see there's the side of law firms like you who are leaning in to see, what can we do to really not just like grow our business, but really create like a better experience for your team, for your staff, for you, for the lawyers at your law firm, but also most importantly, for the people on the other side, the people that you're helping. And then at the same time, I see, another resistance or people who are doing what they can to just diminish what's happening with AI and saying, ultimately, you're still going to need a lawyer. You're still going to need, the right support team. And, we pride ourselves on just having the best client experience. And we do that with a personal touch, right? And I think that's, for a lot of people, that's relatable. Like, if you've spent years and so much energy building the right team,
Yes.
and you trust the team that you have, and you know that they do a great job with clients, it's hard to break out of that mindset sometimes. But I think like the reality is that you can only do so much as a person using kind of technology that was the same 5 years ago. When if you're a competitor, if you're another law firm and you've got the same team, the same talent, the same resources, but you're using technology that lets you do what we talked about, generate documents, demand letters, and everything so much faster, but also just in terms of that initial client experience, making sure that if someone reaches out, it's no longer just pick up the phone and less than 3 rings, right? That I guess was at one time kind of the standard
Yeah.
for, hey, are we really on top of our game when it comes to treating our clients the way that they want to be treated, et cetera, and potential new clients. Now it's different. I mean, this because people still, I think phone leads for most law firms is still the number one channel, but I have clients that's no longer the case. I have clients that when new potential clients come in, it's no longer mostly on phone. It's split between 50% phone and then 50%, well, chat. I would say
Yes.
chat and forms, but for so many businesses, like people are even ditching the traditional contact forms and using things that are more interactive just because of, well, we'll have a chance to get into it, all of the different things that you can do when you are automating that initial client intake. And I guess I want to separate between like the full client intake and that initial intake, because when someone reaches out the first time to you, you don't need every piece of information, but you need enough
Yes.
to figure out, hey, is there something here, a person that we can help? Or is it someone who, if we try to help them, they're just going to waste our time because it's not really what we do. And so
Yeah.
if you can automate the process of that initial qualification, weeding out the wrong people, but speeding up the process for people who are a great fit. And if you can do that in a way that just feels good and is positive experience, then I think those firms that are resisting some of the technology that's available now are just going to have a harder and harder time getting where they want to go as the landscape is changing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think my brother was on the podcast several years back and shared something. So he did our legal marketing at the firm for about 7 years. He had a marketing company based out of Virginia. He did law websites for a number of different industries, including the law. But one thing that he kind of was constantly preaching is, you can put many, money anywhere in terms of advertising, but your website is like your 24/7 salesperson. It never sleeps. It doesn't take a day off there. If you're not putting money into your like kind of primary salesperson, then there's potentially going to be a issue in terms of people being able to find you and get in touch with you and that type of thing. And I think we've kind of moved well past that at this point, where not only is there an expectation that, okay, I'm going to go online and look for a lawyer and try to research somebody and kind of figure out if this is going to be a good fit, and maybe call them immediately, maybe call them the next day if this happens on the weekend. But now there's this expectation of just like immediate response. Like somebody is going to be able to answer my call, respond to my question, in real time, like that I am personally asking, not from a blog or some other thing. Like, I am asking this question right now, and I need an answer back on that. And I think that's where we are, and now it's just like a matter of like how fast do we move to kind of like refining the experience on that front of really responding, drilling down into each person's question. But for the kind of intake agents, for the AI agents that are kind of operating in this real back and forth Q&A, that's where I think that the real value is. And again, like currently already and moving more towards this, the real expectation is on the client's end that, I'm going to be able to find somebody that can speak with me, chat with me right now. So to me, that's where the intaker software for us on the website has really elevated our kind of online website communication, which was just awful before. Just this kind of like message box. We tried to do kind of like a crappy chat version at one point that just didn't respond well, tons of spam coming through, and have moved more to this like real-time engagement with the client. It's been amazing for the client because client gets to talk to somebody real time. And it's also been amazing for us because we have like literally a very good window into a client's problem and what they are looking for by the time we're responding to a lead. So just like from both perspectives, incredible to have like this exchange of information going back and forth so we can like immediately drill down. Here's the path that kind of we want to go down in terms of initiation of conversation with the client. But I think in terms of just how you guys have kind of built the software at Intaker, what have been kind of like the thought processes of, this is what the client is looking for. I feel like I used to personally avoid engaging with the chat bot because I'm like, this is not going to give me helpful information, or I'm going to get like some sort of spam email or something from engaging in this. So like, what have been some of the roadblocks that you all have had to work through in terms of building that software?
Yeah, well, good question. And I would say going back to 2019, when the company first launched its product, what the problems that we went to solve then were two-sided. There's a problem for the law firm, and that typically is around weeding out the good from the bad. They get a ton of inquiries. People, you know this, Jake. People have problems. They need help. You can't solve every one of their problems, but some people, you're the right person to help them out. And it was just, I can maybe tell a short story about one of our
Please.
co-founders. One of our co-founders who initially began this, when Intaker was not even around yet. So Puya and Irfan, the two co-founders of Intaker, were working on a different AI company, totally separate from legal. And also they didn't have large language models back then, like we do now. They were kind of small language models, but very similar technology to things like ChatGPT and such. And Puya had a neighbor, a loud neighbor in WeWork, who was always on the phone. It was just a startup lawyer, personal injury. And he was just, always like barking at these people, doing essentially intake, doing his own, he had his number, people are calling his number. And so Puya took him out to lunch one day to, jokingly ask him to keep it down, but really to find out like what's going on, with his business, because he's just on the phone, like loud all the time, not really sure what he's doing. Because Puya, didn't really know anything about legal at this point.
That's crazy.
But then he explained kind of his business, where he was at, starting a new law firm, doing intake, getting leads, and getting some cases out of it. And at the end of that conversation, at the end of that lunch, Puya had built him just this little super basic, essentially like a type form way for him to like text a link to someone and then, have them answer a few questions. And he said, wow, like this is actually pretty cool. And I know friends from law school that would, probably pay like $100 a month for something like this, if it could help them. And that was the light bulb. That was saying, okay, this is there's an opportunity here. And the reason is he spent so much of his time, Puya knew how much because he was his neighbor, talking on the phone to people that he could not help. And then by the time he did get someone that he got someone on the line that he could help, it had been probably hours of just wasted time. And it was frustrating for him, frustrating for his neighbors in WeWork. You know what I mean? And so that was kind of the initial spark where Puya said to Irfan, okay, we're going to shut this other thing down and just go all in. And they decided together to do that. And so that is how Intaker got started in legal. You can think of it kind of, it was born out of an AI company that was more like consumer driven, nothing to do with legal. And then this opportunity came up. So that was the problem for lawyers. But then there's the other problem, and this is more when they start to see, what the real opportunities are in the space. Getting leads, obviously phone calls, but chat was the thing, and chat was the opportunity that said there's a market here. There's big companies, Engage, Apex, and it's working for a lot of firms. Like they're getting leads, but also at the same time, just testing it out and seeing like what the experience is like. A lot of law firms had suboptimal experiences for chat compared to what other industries like e-commerce had, just in terms of making sure that, when someone lands on your website, you're never going to lose them to like a poor experience or to a slow lag time or having to wait to get a response. You know what I mean? So the problem on the consumer end was really speed. So qualification for law firms and speed for consumers. If we could solve both of those problems, then we would be able to build a product that people would want. That was, I guess, the hypothesis in the beginning, and it worked. And that was, about 6 years ago now that the idea came to be. And then by February 2019, it was launched, and we had our first, initial group of customers. And then we've just grown and grown since then. And where the product is now is totally different, but the technology underlying, Intaker is part of it is everything that was built from the beginning by the ground up by the two technical co-founders. And the part that is most exciting today is the AI piece of it, because we didn't start out as an open AI competitor. No, we're like an Engage, Apex website chat competitor. But now that every company is democratized access to some of the greatest tools in artificial intelligence, and with, OpenAI is just one model. There's so many different models. And we've explored and experimented with them, but still, we use OpenAI in terms of kind of driving the decision making for the AI engine on the back end of Intaker. But what that's done is it's allowed so many companies to kind of tap into this new resource. And that is exciting. It's overwhelming. It can be scary because this, Jake, there's like million AI companies getting started every day.
Yeah.
And
Oh, that's
not
wild.
all of them are good.
No.
There's tools out there that you think like, oh, this sounds great. And then you go to use it and it doesn't do what the marketing said it was going to do. So, I mean, personally, one of the things I'm really grateful for is to be on a team with the people, the owners, the visionaries who come from a deep knowledge of this space and can see far ahead, farther than anyone else, where this technology is going to be able to go, not just in 6 months or a year, but in 5 years' time, and be accurate because they spent their lives in this world before they even got into legal tech. You know what I mean? So it's cool, it's exciting, and how that has morphed into where we are at today is, as you mentioned earlier, with these AI agents. And so I'll just take a moment to introduce like what these are for people who are not familiar. So
Yeah, please.
Everyone here, well, I shouldn't say everyone, but a lot of people listening to this have probably, I'm sure they've heard of ChatGPT. I'm sure many people have played around, created an account and see, what is this AI thing all about? And it's a really powerful tool. And what it can do is, I don't need to describe the whole thing of AI, but you put some information in and you get some information out. And what generative AI can do is create just stunning levels of detailed, not just content that's like, for consumption, but content that is actually capable of making decisions. And these could be simple decisions. These could be more complex decisions too. And so what AI is kind of the thinking brain, to give an analogy, behind some of the automated decision making that you may want a system to be capable of if it's going to be texting with your clients or potential clients. But that alone is not enough. That is, it's the thinking brain, but it's not the body taking the action, right? You still need some vehicle to turn those responses that ChatGPT will come up with into something of value. So how we use agents, and by the way, I guess I'll just to try to define it. I know I'm covering a lot. An AI agent is a system where you give it a task and it will follow through on that task until completion. These are typically more narrow, where the scope of an AI agent is going to be just one thing, like, hey, for this lead, engage them, qualify them, and send them to this other location when they've been qualified, and maybe, tag them with qualified or not, sort of thing. Or, hey, you've got these lists of leads or whatever it is. Reach out to them and make sure that they schedule a consultation and follow up with them until they book this time. And then, disengage and move them over here. So when I talk about AI agents, they're very specific on a task. You can have, 1, 5, 10, 100 AI agents. There's kind of not really like an upper limit to it. But they're very specific. Whereas ChatGPT, like we talked about, is very general. It's kind of like a magic box. But ask it anything, and it seems to know what you need and gives you an output. AI agents have been trained. The training is different. The instructions are different. And really, all they care about is following through on the single task that you give it. So that has been, after I saw you at, or before I saw you at the summit, that was kind of the new thing that is in our product library, delivering AI agents for law firms, for lead capture, now for scheduling as well. And we just launched something for sending automatic retainers to qualified leads. As a criminal defense attorney, maybe that's not like the best step for your practice, but for anyone who's listening in the personal injury, or if you do any mass tort work, being able to say, hey, leads come in and they match that initial criteria for qualification that you set, and be able to give them an option to sign up as a client like immediately. It's a big thing. And so this is actually kind of the first announcement, because we released it yesterday.
That's awesome.
Lab event yesterday.
Yeah.
So I'm announcing it here. You have AI qualifiers and auto retainers and a bunch of new stuff that maybe I'll talk about a little bit more. But
I think that's going to change the space. I really do. I mean, I think, even for those of us in criminal defense, I think all of these kind of tasks that can be assigned, because most of what a legal assistant is doing kind of on a computer can be given to an AI agent, if not now, then in the very near future. And so, part of like my thought process at the summit on day 2, we talked a lot about like, how do you fire yourself? How do you basically, take something that you're doing that you're either don't like doing or you're not good at, and offload it. And this used to be just like a CEO problem, like, basically how do I kind of keep pushing, my tasks to another person. And so I've got to hire somebody this or outsource this problem. Now it's an everybody problem, because, from intake to case manager to somebody in billing, if you're an associate attorney, there's so many things that you can outsource to AI. And if you're not doing that routinely, then you're basically, whether you're charging by the hour or not, you are using your time badly. I mean, that's really at the end of the day, like, we're all kind of concerned with time. And so I think that's really like again, maybe that you don't have a client on the criminal defense end of things that wants to sign up before they speak with a lawyer. But if a lawyer, after speaking with a client, at the push of a button can say, here's the hiring process, and basically here's how you get us engaged. And then there's an AI agent that is kind of not really even closing the deal, but just following up with, here's the documents that we need signed, here's the next steps, like all of these different things. That's just such a yeah, it's change. I mean, it's going to change the way that the business of law is done moving forward. Like there's just no two ways about it.
You bring up a good point because so much of, I think, the fear that people have around this is when AI replaces the human touch.
Right.
And I've seen people try to build things that are fully automated that, yeah, it is kind of, it's not very graceful. And it does lose a lot of the value of, the person to person aspect of what you do. At the same time, I think the real opportunity here is how can you actually increase the amount of those human to human
Yes.
connections by taking all those little things, like you said, follow up. And honestly, that's probably what I see is the number one use case for a tool like some of these AI agents is it takes so much work for someone to just do those gentle nudges and those little reminders and things that obviously people are busy. We all have lives. People forget about the thing that they fully intended on doing. And, oftentimes it just takes several small nudges to get them to follow through. But, whether that's you or someone on your team who's doing it, it can be frustrating. It can feel like it's, a waste of time. But really, I mean, I'm sure you've heard it. The fortune is in the follow-up.
Yes. Yeah.
It's true. Any business that you're in, if you're looking to like grow to the next level, that's even businesses that think they have solved that problem. Usually, there's headroom. There's a gap between where they are and where they could be if they had a way to just make it work every time. So I
Yeah.
think one of the really beautiful things about some of this technology like AI agents is taking those, like you said, those tasks off your plate, off your team's plate that took time away from doing the things that they're best at, where they shine the most, which is
Yeah.
really in having those person-to-person interactions and delivering that great client experience, because that's ultimately what you want your team to do. Not so much sit there and, email this person again and ask why they didn't sign the document.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And I think it's not only a time issue, but it's like a psychological or emotional issue. And I'll just like give an example of this and then like where time could be better spent. I mean, we have people, one of the things that we've preached at the office recently is for a client that calls in, we have like a rule of three follow up, which is basically we're going to contact them in three different platforms. So, texting, email, phone, it's kind of the normal thing. And then we're going to repeat that three times. And if you look at, some of the kind of data that is available about how many times you need to follow up with a client before they kind of can be seen as like a completely lost cause. It's unbelievable. It's like 10 touches is like kind of like the minimum time frame. And most attorneys, just from my experience at the team, do not want to follow up with a client more than once, both from time, but even more importantly, they feel like they're pushing somebody into doing something they don't want to do. So it's not only like I don't have time to do this, but I'm hesitant to do this because I don't want to feel like a used car salesman. Like I just don't want to come across as being pushy or like I'm needy, or I don't want to cause you to feel uncomfortable about this follow up. So if you can offload that problem into a agent and just say, here's the amount of follow-ups that we need. We know it's going to happen every time. It's basically the push of a button. And now you can like shift that same person's time into something that you were just talking about, like is more human. I just had Uli, who is also at the summit, on talking about referral marketing. And one thing that he was emphasizing was handwritten notes. And I love handwritten notes because it's human, right? Like you don't get it's individualized, it's personalized. So now you take that time that you're spending doing something you don't like doing and you're not good at, and put it into, something that can be seen as more personal, whether that's a phone call, whether that's a, handwritten note. It's that human connection building that can't be really replicated. Maybe it could be delegated, but it's better coming from you, as the attorney with your name written down versus somebody else on the team. So there's just certain tasks that cannot be, in a good way, cannot be kind of systematized in that same sense. So I think that that's such a huge shifting point.
Yeah, and you bring up and you reminded me of something I wanted to mention before because we're in this really interesting time now where uh, I'm seeing more and more of these companies coming up with really high quality systems with AI voice.
Yep.
And what we do, like intake your AI agents for anyone listening, like everything we do pretty much is text based. That could be SMS, that could be website, chat based or email, but it's all like written, and it's way easier to do quality control and make sure that things are being communicated the way you would want them to in written form. But I also see this future changing where and this is where I get like to be, a bit fuzzy on, the value, like the good part of this technology versus the potential downsides. Because I would be lying to you if I said like, this new AI future is going to be all, unicorns and rainbows and stuff. Because, the companies that are out there today, like right now at your law firm, if you're listening, I'm sure if someone calls, it's a human that picks up,
Yep.
right? Or it's like a pre-recorded phone tree, a message, and kind of go the way you need to get in touch with a person. But what happens when someone calls your firm and they're speaking to an AI and they don't know it?
Yep.
And like, what happens to even the trust there? And that's not just like a trust with your law firm. That's like on a fundamental level of technology affecting human connection, And so that's the direction that I was at a conference recently, and I saw another company doing this, AI intake over voice. But it brings up like interesting points. How do you do that in a way that feels good, that feels ethical, that feels like you're helping people without getting, sneaky about it? And it's pretty interesting what people are doing, and being able to call and the first person who picks up says, "Hey, I'm so and so AI, and hey, I'm a robot, but I'm pretty good. You can press one, talk to a real person, but you can try me out. I'm pretty good." And that's an interesting way to like put the guard down with people,
Yes. Yep.
so that you're not pretending this thing that you're not. But at the same time, I think big picture, it's like ultimately this technology is going to change relationships between people, no doubt. It already has. All technology does. People on social media, people using Snapchat or anything today, like communication is always changing because of technology. And it's one of those things where I can't tell you where this is ultimately going to go. I don't think anyone
I don't.
knows, and it's scary. But it shouldn't be like hide under the bed. It's like we gotta get out there, and uh, what can we do to make sure that this doesn't like negatively affect us? I think it's just make sure that you're always remembering to establish real connections with real people whenever you can in life, because these moments, just like me and you on this podcast right now, like in the future, like this might be something like precious and like more rare than it is now, because we're living in this world where you got robots walking down the street next to you. I live in Los Angeles, in West LA, and the number of self-driving cars and little food delivery bots in my neighborhood, dude, there are days if I'm going for a walk, I'll see more robots than people, unless I keep walking like to a different area. But where I am is I, I already feel it. Like
Yep.
things are changing. The world is changing. And I think, depending on where you are listening, like especially in the North Carolina space, it could look different, especially now that, there's going to be big areas being rebuilt. And, how that happens might be with more types of integration and new technology than, we ever thought. But in the midst of all that, I think, I know I'm covering a lot, but there's the two things that I guess are important to me. It's making sure that those human connections stay at the core of your life, and that means your business. And how you can really do that is by using technology in ways that is going to afford you the time, the freedom to focus more on these people-to-people interactions. I
Yeah,
guess to sum it
100%.
up, as these get more rare, as we're working more with technology just to communicate, the value of these moments need to increase.
Yes.
They need to become more beautiful, more meaningful. So,
Yeah,
my
I
rant.
think we've got like such an amazing, I think that if you look at the technology and you kind of think about it like how can this help somebody else, and then what does it allow me to then kind of elevate my game too. You look at like I saw uh a demo online. I still haven't seen this in real life, but like a driverless taxi. And that was just so insane because to me that's the Jetsons. Like I couldn't even, like, if you had told me 2 weeks ago, does that exist? I'd be like, I'm sure the technology is coming soon. I couldn't even like fathom that it's a real thing until I like literally saw a video of a guy like filming the seat next to him, driver's seat empty, and driving around. And it's like, well, man, what does that allow you to do once that becomes more widespread technology? I mean, you really like could be the Lincoln lawyer where you're working, covering all of these different counties and, working in your car everywhere that you go, all of this free time. And just to give like another quick example, we had I have a insurance agent that I met with today. He could have sent me documents to sign by text. Like I've been working with this guy for 9 years. I would never go somewhere else. Like, the guy is just an amazing human being, awesome to talk to, always answers when I need something. But he was like, Jay, I'm just going to come by and we'll just sign it at your house. And so to have like, the freedom to then on his end, and I mean, I enjoyed it as well, but like be able to build connection, over an hour conversation about nothing insurance related is so powerful. Like that's the capital that he is maximizing. And, I know he's got a great admin team, and I'm sure that, every company starting to insurance and otherwise is starting to use some of these like AI agent features. But I think if you can focus on what value does this provide to the client with Intaker, I think so many clients are really grateful that I get to speak to somebody immediately, no matter what time of day it is. I get to, input, here's my problem. I need to tell somebody about this so they can help respond. They're getting this back and forth. And then like, okay, here's the follow-up that's going to happen from this. Okay, I've somewhat now offloaded my problem. Like it's not fully maybe connected in terms of how we utilize Intaker, but like somebody's going to call me back, diagnose what's going on, and here's like kind of the map for next steps. That's such a valuable thing. And I've experienced that through using like the DMV website recently. It would have used to taken a 45-minute phone call just to talk to somebody, and I renewed my driver's license in like 10 minutes. It's like that's,
Nice.
all through, texting. And so I think that people understand the value of that in a, almost increasing path. So I feel like there's just so many opportunities. I know you got to jet here shortly, Joe. So let me wrap it up with this kind of question. If there was one next step on your end that you could uh, pass along for anybody that's kind of like interested in utilizing AI agents in a more powerful way, what would be kind of like your advice to kind of learning more or testing something? Like what would be something, that a practical tip that you could pass along for somebody to start using AI in a more meaningful way at their firm?
It's a good question. And what I would say, it really depends on where your problems lie. And I see this where people want to jump in to AI and just start using it in their business. But I would caution against that approach and take it a step back and say, hey, where are the weak links in the chain right now?
Mm,
Where are the parts of my business where it's taking too much time? I'm not getting the results that I am looking for. or it's just wear and tear on my team, and start there and see what. Just do an audit, and I know that there are people like probably Jesse Fry that you work with, and there's all sorts of coaches that can help you do this, but if you start there and say, hey, where are those problems in my business that if I knew I could solve these, I could hit my goals, whatever they may be. And then I would say, look and see what are those tools available to help with those specific problems. Because we're in an age, I mentioned it before, there's a million and one AI tools. Even like AI legal tech startups, there's an overwhelming amount. So if you understand what those problems are that are your top priority, I would start there. So for us with Intaker, that's everything to do with that like initial client interaction, now all the way to getting them signed as a client. And I won't do too much of like a product plug, but the other thing that we released yesterday that I mentioned in addition to the auto retainers is being able to really customize the experience for people who are a good fit for your firm qualified versus not. So for example, being able to automate with the scheduling process. If someone comes in, they answer certain questions and you want them to just be able to book a time on your calendar and have a different video message. We didn't talk too much about video, but video is a big part of the Intaker experience, like on your website. Just go to Jake's website if you want to see Jake's amazing Intaker video. I show you off as an example, by the way, because I love your messaging and just how you deliver. But having like a different path for people that kind of match your expectations for qualified versus people who might be, not quite there yet. So if, that whole thing, if you're getting leads, but you're having a hard time turning them into consultations, as an example, then, look at some of the AI tools specifically to solve that. Obviously, Intaker is one. If you're looking to just, get better quality leads from like the marketing that you're driving to your website and things like that, that's what you mentioned before, Jake. That's kind of like where we began some of the first problems that we started to solve. But anyway, there's way more tools than just what we do that are out there. And the nice thing is, in the modern age, like so many of these integrate with each other as they should. And so I guess that's the other thing before you start going all in on, hey, is this AI tool going to be the one for me to solve all my problems? Making sure that whatever technology you're already using in the firm, that all the pieces work together, they play nice, because if they don't, you're just going to create other problems downstream. But I'm sure people in your network know where to go, Jake. But I would say, if you want to learn a little bit more about using AI to either get more leads, create a better client experience, or signing more cases that you're driving from the leads, those are things at intaker.com. Go there, check it out. Leave a chat. It's pretty much the only way to get in touch with us. Just leave a chat, and we can see if there's something there for you.
I love it. I love the identify the problem before looking for the software or trying something, because that's such a, there is solutions almost for every step in the process or every problem that exists. So if you've got that list of pain points, that's such a powerful way to start, because then you can really dive into that. So Joe, I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your wisdom. It was, again, just a blast meeting you at the summit. Look forward to many more conversations down the road.
Appreciate you so much, Jake, and we'll see you for the next one. Thank you again for having me.
Absolutely.